new channel called Whisper. I'm Rory Brown, and I'm one of the hosts for this channel. Before I introduce myself in detail, I'm going to hand over to Kirsten, my co-host for the channel, and let her position kind of Whispers and herself. So, Kirsten.
Thank you. Thank you, Rory, and welcome to our wonderful guests who we'll introduce you to in a moment. We're very honored to have them, and you're going to enjoy spending time with them, I know. So the Whisper channel was really started after a series of videos that Rory and I hosted together, and the videos turned out to be extraordinary meetings of people who found themselves as experts saying things for the first time in a collaborative shared space and listening to themselves as much as they were speaking to us and those that were gathered with us. And having done the series of videos for various clients, we thought that we would carry on and move into territory that we found more interesting and valuable. And that was the idea that there is a whisper that we hear. And we hear the whisper differently, and we define that whisper differently. And some of us don't want to define the whisper. The idea of defining it is anathema to the whisper itself. So this channel is really an opportunity to co-create and make sense of the knowledge that's alive within us, or the consciousness that's alive within us, however you would like to speak about it. It really comes from the idea that we are not the owners or masters of our lives. And to paraphrase Rumi, who said we are on a path of love, we're not the owners or masters of our lives. I would like to say we are not the owners or masters of our lives. We are listening for and to and following a whisper. And this channel is really about exploring what that means for various people. Some of them might be exploring a whisper that they're listening to in a very spiritual, fine spiritual way. Other people might be listening to the whisper of plants or animals or electrical engineering, but they're hearing the whisper. It's everywhere. And let's find out what that means for us today.
Thank you, Kirsten. So from my side, as I said, my name is Rory Brown, and Kirsten's kind of summed up exactly, if I could just put it in a couple of words myself, whether you call it intuition, whether you call it insight, whether you call it a kind of aha moment, I agree with Kirsten, always are tapping into something that could give us a whisper and take us in a completely new direction. So that's the positioning for the concept of this channel, trying to either help people find what their whisper means and what it is, or just tapping in and having someone share what their whisper that they are aware of with us. In terms of the way that we're doing the format, you can see that we're kind of adhering to the lockdown that's happening across the globe at the moment. Everybody's in their own space, and we're using a channel, a digital channel, to be able to communicate. So just bear with us. It's going to be varying levels of technology throughout the series. Some people are going to have wonderful connections, some people won't. But it's more about what the individuals say and the kind of space and what we are going to experience together, you the viewer as well, in terms of this channel. And the journey, as Kirsten just expressed, that we're going to experience with each other. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our two guests. As you can see, they're the two ladies on the screen with Kirsten and myself. And the first guest is Muna Bilgrami and Ingrid Hurwitz. And I'd like to welcome both of them here. And in the process of welcoming, I'm first going to hand over to Muna and let her introduce herself. And then I'll hand over to Ingrid. So Muna, welcome.
Thank you very much for that welcome. Am I being heard?
Yes, you are.
Wonderful. Well, that's the starting point, really. Listening and hearing is today's venture. I was born in Iraq, and I grew up there and in Lebanon and Britain and the US. And then I lived for a large portion of my life in Pakistan. And now I'm living here, where I'm completing a PhD in the study of Sufism.
Wow.
And so, in answer to your question, or to kickstart it really, I think we need to know what is what whispering might not be, because it's about the source of whispering. Now, I come from a very specific tradition, and I'm immersed in its teachings. And the idea of whispering has both negative and positive qualities, and it depends on where is this coming from. So if the whisper is, as it says in the Quran, I seek refuge with the Almighty from the whisperings of shaitan. And shaitan is the Arabic word for Satan. But the root meaning of that word is to be cast off the path. And Kirsten just said in her introduction that this is all about the path of love. So when you are cast off the path of love, then you experience other qualities that are negative, despair, etc. So we're not listening to those little whispers, maybe the whispers of the self-saboteurs. For me, whispering is about listening to my innermost heart. And there again, we've got a very elaborate cosmology and understanding in Sufism about the heart, because it is the space where your soul resides, in a sense. It is your space, that area where you connect to your source. And you can name the source in many ways: God, whatever you want to call it, the unity, the singularity. We have all come, the spirit that animates us has come in all of us from a single source, which is why we're able to relate to each other. So for me, the idea of whispering is about listening. And actually, it's about listening to light, the voice of light, because light and sound are both frequencies. And how we learn to listen to that sound is always there, but it's distorted and obscured by the interferences that we bring by associating and identifying ourselves with who we are, with role play, with our egos. So, the Sufis have a very nice metaphor, which is polishing the heart, because the light is already there. And if you keep polishing the outer covering, then that light will shine. So for me, listening to the whispers is attuning myself to that deep, deep inner voice of guidance that will keep me always in balance and neutrality, but without avoiding action, and being joyful.
Oh, thank you very much, Muna. That was an incredible introduction and answering some of the question that I was going to pose. So, Ingrid, over to you. And also, while you're introducing yourself, maybe you could explain your understanding or the meaning of what a whisper could potentially be.
Thanks so much. I feel as though I need a few months to truly appreciate and absorb what Mona just said, because it was so absolutely beautiful and profound and illuminating that I think I should be very quiet for a long time. So, my name, as you said, is Ingrid Hurwitz, and what I do is I am an Enneagram teacher and coach. I teach psychotherapists, healers, and other coaches and Enneagram facilitators who do corporate work and coaching in that system. And some people think of it as a personality typology, but it's really not. It's a profoundly psychospiritual system that allows people to access the knowing heart, as Muna was describing it, and to discern between the whisperings of the lower self, the compulsions, the fixations, the addictions, and the true source of intelligence that arises in the knowing heart. You know, there are Sufi terms for it, there are Kabbalistic terms for it, there are many different metaphors from different spiritual traditions about what this true wisdom is, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit more. But that's really what I feel I'm here for, is to help people connect with this whisper. And I am so full of joy and gratitude that this idea came to you. And I would absolutely love to hear where you got the idea for this show, because I suspect it came to you in a dream or from the whisper itself. Tell us, please.
Absolutely. So, Kirsten, I'm going to give it to you to go for first.
Yes, it did. It was a dream. It was a dream. It was a dream that I had, that as citizens of the universe in search of the origin of breath, that we should that we should take this time where we can connect so easily virtually and use it to our mutual benefit. And it really leads to our next question around how do we start to listen to the whisper. For somebody who might be watching the channel, it's quite overwhelming listening to the beauty, Muna, that you hold, and also the beauty that you hold, Ingrid. This deep oceans of contact with the whisper that you hear is so apparent in the way that both of you speak. And I would like to ask that you reach into the virtual space to somebody that might be listening and give them some crumbs on the path in terms of how do we start listening to the whisper of the origin of breath, or however we would like to use those words. Maybe I can come back to you, Mona.
Sure. Wow. So I think suffering is a very good place to start.
Oh no.
Sure.
That's not the answer I wanted.
My goodness.
It's because,
I wanted the
no,
luxurious
because you see,
answer.
suffer, you don't want to suffer. So you start to experience disequilibrium, and then you start like, what's going on? So then you start to question and start to be more reflective, right? So suffering is very good. Hello, thank you, suffering. Goodbye, we don't want you anymore. But I think it's not until you realize that you're suffering that you can then start to turn away from it. So the idea of turning is very key in this idea of listening to the whisper, because, for example, the word in Arabic in the Quran for the word heart is qalb, and it comes from the verb qalaba, to turn. So if you would like to please visualize the idea of the heart as being something that turns on its own axis. As soon as its direction gets fixed in one way, it no longer turns beautifully on its own axis. Look at all the planets. Everything is held in perfect balance because everything is following its own orbit. So this heart is sensitive to everything. And if it is fixed in one direction, it no longer starts to get the messages. It no longer is able to listen. So the idea then is to still this heart, still the mind rather, and empty the monkey mind, find a way to block out the white noise. So a practice of emptying out, of stilling the body. And breath is amazingly powerful. It is the portal. I mean, if you want to become a yogi, breath is the key. If you want to do anything that involves balance and bringing back equilibrium, it involves breathing. We just started today with that beautifully led guided meditation. And that helps because we become so much more aware. It calms things down. So our methodology is really to empty out, to find a place of stillness, empty out, become aware, let go of things, and then listen, and then turn. And the answers do percolate through your consciousness. But again, have you managed to remove the white noise? Have you managed to park your concerns and your anxieties and your worldly affairs? Because that static is always going to be there to varying degrees. But if you can just find a way into stillness, and I suggest through breath is a wonderful way to do that, that's a start.
Sure, thank you. That's really beautiful answer. So just to position, if I could take 1 second to answer Ingrid's question about where we got this from, just to comment on what you just said, Mina, now. I think my idea came from a meditation session that I was in. I was doing my own meditation and working on the breath, and I suddenly saw myself taking what I'd done in a corporate environment with Kirsten in terms of interviews and creating spaces for people to share. And I suddenly saw that I could do it with people with a lot of meaning behind it, and maybe influence and change people's lives, where they could hear the whispers that you just shared, for instance, now with us. It moved me completely. And that's what I want to do. I want to be able to give people direct access to what you've just said in a way that's new and refreshing, and maybe inspires them and allows them to hear their own whisper. So in terms of that question, how would you define a whisper in your life? Ingrid, maybe you could share your answer with us, or some insight?
And also, Inks, while you answer, maybe just to say what Mona said, how do we start?
Yeah, how do we start?
So I think the departure point of self-recognition. So my research area is on the cultivation of the inner observer. And the departure point is recognizing the extent to which we have chosen or adopted certain reality strategies or succumb to addictions that fulfill our need partially for esteem, safety, belonging. So these are the things that we long for, but we look for them in the wrong places when we come from our ego and the lower inclinations of our soul. Or as Mona says, the whisperings of Shaitan, whether you see that literally or metaphorically, whether you have a metaphysical perspective, or you can even be a complete atheist and still understand that you have fallen prey to certain illusions that are ruining your health, your finances, and your relationships. And those are the addictions of the ego. So through the cultivation of awareness of one's own suffering and recognizing it, hitting that ward, and acknowledging that this really isn't working, that's the beginning of the turning. Mona speaks about it in terms of the help in Sufism. In Judaism, that turning is called teshuvah, and it's really a turning back to our divine origin and a recognition that we are grounded in divine presence. It is our nature. And by stripping away the fixation, we can reconnect with that. But it's not necessarily through like a discipline and rules. For me, the work is about recognizing how much we are loved and emanations of love, and that our wounding is what separates us from the knowledge of our divine essence. And it's by bringing the light of God and the compassion of love to those wounds, being able to hold them. I am here for you, my starving heart. I am here for you, my desperation for love. I am here for you, my shame. It's through that, with the grace that infuses that capability and expands our capability to understand that we are love and we are loved, that we begin to trust the messages that come to us. And you have shown us right here in the very moment of what you are doing here. You listened to a dream. You read the signs. In Sufism, they say, the Sheikh will say, read the signs. There are messages coming to you all the time. So God in Sufism is called the real. You are being presented with information in every atom that you encounter about love and about who you are and about the choice to you. And that pivoting on the axis of the heart that Mona said is so beautiful, because that metaphor reminds us that what we have in the absolute freedom that we have as conscious beings is to ask. Is all we have to do is turn and ask to be met. They say in the Quran, I also love the Quran, I love Judaism, Buddhism, they all bring the same message. If you take one step towards God, God comes running towards you. And if you create a receptivity in your heart, then you will be given wisdom and understanding and clear knowledge. So you'll be given a dream. You'll be given something in the language that you understand. Because divine is so infinitely gracious and compassionate in its nature, it speaks your own language. So I receive messages in another way. Each person I speak to in my workshops and groups and my coaches, it's one of the questions I ask them. When did you experience a profound clarity, a knowing? It's called Ain el Yaqeen in Sufism. We both know it's a knowledge of certainty. And everybody has had those moments, whether it was a blind light through the top of their head, or something dropping into their gut with a thud of knowing, whether it was goosebumps or whatever. There are a million ways in which this information is gifted to us. So it's about what are our amplifiers? Where's my satellite dish? What is it, How do I refine my ability to hear, read? And some people get these messages in smell. Someone can be coaching somebody and they suddenly get the strong smell of jasmine. And you know what? While you're talking, I'm getting this very strong smell of jasmine. The person's crying and crying because that's about their gran or about their mom who died 2 months ago and who loved jasmine. So the more you become attuned to your own channels, you're more able to speak that truth and that beauty. You're more able to direct your actions in alignment with that love. So that's kind of my experience of it. And working with people around helping them to trust the information that's coming at them.
Thank you, Ingrid.
Yeah.
An incredible answer. So as both you and Muna were speaking, and also when Kirsten was doing the intro right in the beginning, I got a bit of a whisper. And one of the things that I'm picking up coming through quite strongly here is I'm speaking to mouthpieces of the divine feminine. I think that's each one of you, because you're adding to the space such feministic insight that is quite the counter or the juxtaposition of quite the hard kind of aggressive male dominance that I kind of sometimes default to in my life and have experienced in my past as well. So thank you for that. Kirsten, I saw you wanted to say something or add something as well.
Yes, I just wanted to respond to the richness that and the pure essence of essence that Inky speaks about, and Mona also, and also direct a question to Mona, if I may. The way that you speak about the heart being almost like a planet in a system, you know, and needing to be calibrated, I got an image of my heart almost as a planet outside of time and space, belonging to the universe rather than belonging to this place. And I wanted to ask if you would talk about that, and then also, Inky, following on what you said, I don't feel my channels are clean enough to hear as many whispers as I want to. I want to hear only the whisper. So those two ideas to you, please, Mona.
So starting with your second point, I think the whole idea of whispers is that they're very subtle. They're not knocking on your door loudly. Well, sometimes it can happen. You can get that, you know, bolt of lightning. But generally, the idea of a whisper is that it's so subtle, and therefore you need to remove all the other obstacles for your hearing or your sensitivity and your receptivity to be able to listen to it. So there's that aspect, and connecting that to the first, which is that if you continue to fill up your mind with so many ideas and your heart with so many attachments, bearing in mind that this is what we do as humans. I mean, you can't hold yourself in judgment all the time on that, but just be observing that this is what you do. You form attachments, they cause you difficulty, they also give you joy. You will have ideas, concepts, things that you think you must do, ambitions. They will also enrich you, but they will also diminish you and take up all your time and energy. So the idea of things turning and turning on your own axis, the axis is that oneness, is that singularity, is that clarity and utter balance. That is actually inside us already. So from what I have been taught, and my teacher has enabled me to understand that the soul is actually already perfect, in perfect balance, and perfectly connected to its source, and that it is a beam of light from that source. And therefore, you are not having to do anything like the soul work that people talk about. It's actually the lower soul, which is what Ingrid also mentioned, your lower self, your ego. It's actually that's the area that you need to pay attention to, because the light is already there, but it's being obscured. So it's not coming out, it's not percolating through to your waking consciousness. So I like the idea that you are wanting to hear the whispers all the time. You know, there's a prophetic prayer from the Prophet Muhammad. He says, "Oh Lord, show me things as they truly are." And sometimes I also aspire to that, but sometimes I think, gosh, if we really see things as they truly are, we see everything then, you know. But it's liberating. The idea of seeing things as they truly are means that you are free from illusions. So this is, I'll stop there and let you take the questions to Ingrid. But of course, there's so much to be said. Oh, one thing I did want to say, which is also in the Kabbalah, and which is that in our cosmology, we understand that we have a ruh, you have a self and a soul. And your ruh is the ruach of the Kabbalah. And it is breath. It is breathed into us. So again, something subtle, something that is fluid, something that moves and animates. And it's so beautiful. So that is our essence. We are nothing but pure soul at heart.
Beautiful. I would just like to notice that there was a car hooter in the background just before you said the prayer, may I see things as they really are. So that was not coincidence.
No.
Inks, can I ask you the very same question?
So my thing that I say all the time is show me the truth of love and the love of truth in this moment. and then I wait, and then something happens and the sign comes. So I feel as though I'm utterly reliant on grace because of the obscurations. In Kabbalah, they call it klipot, which are like husks that obscure the voice of truth. So for me, it's really, really important to stop. Stillness, solitude, and silence are where the messages come from. And also understanding the nature of the klipot, these husks, and what thickens them. And the things that thicken them are lying and going into a lot of density. So, and I'm not saying this in a moralistic way, I'm saying it out of the experience of going into dense places and experiencing the harm that it does to the heart, soul, and mind, and the ability to discern. So, for example, getting drunk, it messes with our ability to discern the good, the beautiful, and the true. And what happens when you go into dense places away from the light and you follow the impulses of the lower self, you start finding things beautiful that are truly ugly, and you start finding the beautiful ugly. So you start thinking, oh, this divine path is a waste of time, and it's piety, it's sanctimonious. You stop being able to hear, and you lose your conscious, you lose the part of yourself that is connected to the divine witnessing. Sorry, I just have to move my cat because he's trying to smash stuff off the table and disturbing me.
Okay, no problem. No problem.
Talk about spontaneous show, but that is my experience. So it's stop when you feel an impulse to do something and you suspect it might be dodgy. Stop. Stillness, solitude, silence, wait. Show me the truth of love and the love of truth, and then watch, because something will come. You'll get a dream, somebody will send you a poem, something will come. And for me, that's become my way of navigating reality. And I wanted to share because the word subtle has come up a lot. I once had a dream that somebody came to me on a mountaintop and we were looking up at the cosmos in wonder. And this person said to me, I'm going to give you the most important word that you're ever going to receive. It's the most important word in the universe. And in the dream, the person offered me this word. I could kind of hear it. And the word was latif, which is an Arabic word. And I didn't know that word. And the next day I went and looked it up. And it means God the subtle. Al-Latif is God the subtle in Arabic. And the exquisiteness of, you said at the beginning, we're in search of the breath. We are in search of the subtle dimensions of reality. You know, we live in a very gross three-dimensional world, what I call this density. And what we're looking for is God the subtle, God the hidden, God the immanent. So in Islam, there are 99 names to remind us of what's real and what's true and what's beautiful and good. And if we trust that to speak to us and to guide it back, to guide the essence in us back to the essence that is, then we do receive. There's the grace is there. We don't need to fight and strive and be at war with ourselves to try and figure the stuff out. It's literally just asking. And yeah, I think that's my way.
Wow, thank you.
Can I ask you another question, Raw? Sorry, I'm hogging the bandwidth here. I won't do that every video, I promise.
No, not at all.
I want to ask each of you how your whispers changed. So maybe my whisper went from this to this, because I think there's a progression in how we listen and how we can hear. And I think it would be nice for people to know that you might have had these dreams, Inks and Winna, that you carry all this wisdom. You sound like a sheikh to me. But what was the arc of that? I went from this whisper to this whisper, and maybe I can start with you, Winna.
Well, we are creatures living in time, and we are evolving and changing. And I think the whispers that come to us are not so, they do change also, mirroring that progression and evolution. And some of them can be subtler and some of them are not so subtle. Some of them are really obvious. But you're not seeing them. And then when you finally learn to listen, then you're seeing it in the stark light of clarity. So I also have had dreams. I think sometimes when you make the intention to have the dream or have something speak to you, you can actually induce a dream. But then also there are certain times of the day, again, connected with times of stillness when there's no activity. And I always like to say my muse, if I'm doing creative work, my muse always visits me at 4 in the morning or early in the morning. And I have to get up. I'm compelled to obey the call of the muse. So that's one characterization of a whisper. But also, you mentioned earlier that, Ingrid mentioned earlier that feeling of the gut. And as we know, there are so many neuroreceptors in our gut, and you say, I should have followed my guts. Every time we regret not following that instinctive, deeper feeling. So that feeling sometimes of unease, a hunch that you have, these are all, and they change. And every time I've avoided listening to that hunch, you regret it. And it is amazing how much information and knowledge is there, but for the asking. My own teacher says the question only arises when the answer is already there. So in moments of difficulty, for example, when I'm in a good balanced state, I will welcome that difficulty and say, oh, this is very interesting. I don't like this, but that means that something's about to open up and there's an answer somewhere that's going to, give some resolution. So, when I'm not in a very balanced state, then you start reacting. You don't stand back. You don't create that space to stand back and say, let's observe what's happening here for a moment. I think taking that time out to stop and observe is very important. So I think there are different times when that whisper is more audible than others, depending on your own inner state. And I think if you create a habit, or you inculcate in yourself a habit of self-awareness, of not rushing to judgment, and just observing more neutrally, that's very useful, especially in times of pressure and stress.
Roy, what about you? How's your whisper changed? The listening to your whisper changed? If you don't mind me interviewing you for a moment.
Oh my goodness,
what's the arc been?
So I would easily say that the first time that I ever heard a whisper was when I was probably in my late teens. I'd been raised in a certain sect and quite rigidly brought up believing a certain set of things. And as soon as I started questioning those things, the individuals that were trying to reinforce it kind of weren't happy. And I had to part my way from those individuals. And the evolution of my whisper has been intense, because every time I hear a new whisper, it takes me down a different path. And one of the key things that I've realized in my life is that my purpose for being is purely experiential. I'm here to experience things. Obviously, I need to do it in a way that is positive, and I learned that early on. And But if a whisper tells me that I need to do something like create a channel like this, or engage with somebody whom I normally wouldn't, or take a set of decisions that I don't usually take, I often will listen to those kind of whispers, and they can come in many different forms. Sometimes it's kind of what Ingrid was saying, like I can literally sometimes, one of the things that I love is crows. So if I see a lot of crows in the day, I know the day is going to be a lucky day for me, a good day. And I've got whispers like that, like many different things. They take many different forms. And I'm conscious enough to be able to look at them. Some people might call it omens. I call it literally insights or guidance that I'm receiving. And whether in my terms, I often think it's my own higher self, that connection to the divine that I have, that is sometimes guiding and pointing me in a direction that is different than what I usually expected. And I've ended up doing things with my life that has taken me completely 180 degrees from where I was. So that's kind of my experience with the whisper. And I think it's a design. I think it's divine. I think it is. I think it comes from the divine. And we have to attune ourselves to it.
Thank you.
Luckily, I think I did it when I was younger. So, yeah.
Inks, I wonder if you wouldn't mind answering a little bit about the arc or the evolution of your listening to the whisper to take us home and out of the space. I think we're coming very much to the end here in a moment, and I'd love you to take us to the close of this wonderful time together.
Yeah, it has been amazing. And I disappeared there for a little while. Obviously, I wasn't supposed to interrupt. And
totally fine.
So I think the evolution of my ability to hear is ongoing. Sometimes it's trial and error. It used to be I only could hear if it was like flashing lights, a massive light beam through the top of my head, or 15 people telling me the same thing within the space of 2 days, and a poem on my Facebook feed, and someone else WhatsApping me the poem. So it used to have to be really, really loud until I realized that it's happening all the time. And so I've become more sensitive to what's going on. And, noticing things like if I lose my keys, then I become much more attuned to, okay, so I need to notice something in the space that's been created. There's an extra half an hour in which I'm looking for my keys and I can't get where I'm supposed to go. So I drop, the minute something goes wrong, I drop into, okay, what's here for me? So that's become quite an important thing, and I lose my keys often. Like Rory was saying, things, birds, omens, dreams. Sometimes it's overhearing something in a restaurant. As I walk past somebody, they say something, and I just know that little snippet of conversation was for me. And I get a lot of visual flashes, specifically here. So if something arises, and it can be spiritual beings or guides or imagery that are trying to communicate something to somebody. Very clear over here. And then there are things that I see in people as well. So that's been enhanced over the past couple of years that I've been working with the Enneagram. Is an ability to see people's auras, their chakras, where their stress is, and if I touch them, I get flashbacks of their memories. So there are things like that I didn't expect, but because of working with the Enneagram, more and more of that stuff has happened, because I'm not sure why. I suppose I've asked for it as part of my work, is to see the truth of love and the love of truth. And when you tell people what you're seeing, it's very healing for them because it validates their pain, their wounding, and love. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff, and it keeps becoming more subtle and at the same time more kind of legible.
Wow.
And everyone's got it. I need to say this because otherwise it sounds like I'm saying I'm special. Everybody has multiple intelligences and some very clear channels, but because of the noise, they don't believe that they have them and they aren't actively pursuing that knowledge. So actually any single person could come and be trained in how to access this information.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with
We'll
that.
give your details afterwards, so that people on the title screen at the end, we'll give your details so that people who want to find out more can email you and find out about your workshops and programs, and also if they would like to explore anything with you. When I don't even know if you're open to people contacting you to explore things by email, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
So thank you very much. Thanks to the guests. Thanks, Kirsten. And to the viewers out there, just down at the bottom, there's a subscribe button. Please hit the subscribe button. If you liked this video, please like it. Give us a thumbs up. And any comments that you'd like to share with us as well, we will respond to all the comments made. So thank you very much. And to the viewers, this is the format of our content going forward. These are the caliber and the depths of people that we're going to have on board. So if you're interested in having more, come back and watch whatever we put out. So thank you very much. Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you, Mona. Thank you, Ingrid. Thanks, everyone. This was really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to your dream. Thank you for listening to the whisper. Somebody is going to benefit so massively from this.
Thank you so much, all of you. What a fantastic way to start the day.
Thanks, Mona.